1. We have tried to let it go and continue to be nice, but it keeps getting harder and harder to take the high road. I'm a 34-year-old woman. My family has lived in our house for over 20 years. When we bought our house, we did not purchase an adjoining lot because the owner wanted well above market value. The lot sat empty and overgrown for many years after my family moved in. The lot sits between our property and the house of our closest neighbors. Our neighbor's house is rented by a large family, and for a few years, they would mow the front part of the empty lot. They stopped mowing it after we finally bought the empty lot. When we bought the lot, the back half was completely overgrown and unusable. We rented equipment, and my mother, in her 50s, and I began the task of cleaning it up so that we could use it. Our neighbor and his 2 teenage sons came over and started helping us clean up. We paid them for their help and even hired one of the teenagers, 16, male, to do yard work over the summer. We also gave him a $1,600 electric bike that we had gotten a good deal on but never really used. We recently bought a used tractor to use on our property, and the neighbors asked to borrow it to move some things around their yard. We gave them permission to use it one time, and they kept it for weeks. When I was finally able to get them to bring it back, it sat in my yard for less than 48 hours before it was back in their yard. They did not ask to use it a second time. I have since removed the key from the tractor and now keep it inside the house. They have a bright spotlight on the side of their house that faces ours. It is angled in such a way that it shines directly into the windows of my house. When they first put it up about 3 months ago, I asked them if they could angle it down just a bit so that it would not do so. They still have not adjusted the angle of the light. It's been a bit over a year since we bought the lot, and a few days ago we had our entire property surveyed because we plan on fencing in the entire 3 acres of property. We are having a new building put up for a business that we are starting, and we also want to be able to allow our large dogs to roam the entire property. They pulled out some of the property markers, so we went and got some fence posts to put where the markers were. When we were placing the posts, the neighbors came out and told us that we were not allowed to put up a fence because they didn't want to move a swing they have hanging on one of our trees. We had planned to make that part of the fence a pair of cattle gates that could be opened so their kids could still swing, and so they could still pull their vehicles into their backyard if their other driveway was blocked. They also said that if we did put up a fence, they would tear it up. As we were putting in the temporary fence posts, they decided to start putting up a cattle fence along the property line. They then got really angry when we told them they could not connect the cattle fence to the posts we had placed because they had been placed an inch inside of the actual property line on our side. The posts are temporary and only placed for the fencing company so that they could stay within the property lines. Our neighbors then demanded that we pay them back for when they were mowing the lot that we bought last year. They are trying to make us pay them for mowing a piece of land that we did not own at the time they were mowing it. We are going to put a fence up, and now I am seriously considering going with a nice tall privacy fence all along the parts of my property that adjoin their property. At this point, I don't care if they have to move or get rid of the swing entirely. There are some other things that they have done that I have issue with, but this post is too long as it is. Edit. I now have some of the fence up. We decided to go with a cattle panel fence that we will cover with a tan shade cloth. It's a bit more expensive than the fence we were originally going to put up. The good news is that it will take less time to put up the fence, and it will still look good and block the view of the neighbors. As for the bright spotlight that is still pointed directly in my windows, we might have a solution for that as well. I'm going to build a really nice outdoor movie screen along the fence line that we will be able to enjoy all summer long, and it will also have a removable stage for outdoor entertainment for our business. We also added 3 cameras to our security system. They run along the fence line and also cover the driveway into the lot. We also ended up having to call the police to serve the neighbors an official notice of no trespass. For the last 3 days, our neighbors have been yelling outside about how the fence is ugly, and the mom keeps yelling out to her kids, telling them that it's their fault that we are putting up the fence because we don't want to let them play in our yard anymore. She also keeps yelling out loud enough for us to hear that they can't play outside in their own yard anymore because if they wander into our yard, we'll call the cops on them. Seems emotionally abusive on her part towards the kids. 2. And before we start this story, I'd like to say a very special shout out to Sunday Cat, who is the bestest kitty cat in the whole wide world. I have lived in my place for about a year and a half. I am the first-time renter and fairly new to the area, so I expected some kind of negative drawback from whatever place I wound up in. I was really lucky for the first year and had basically zero complaints or issues with the apartments or our neighbor, but it slowly changed about 6 months ago. It started with a crying baby at late hours and occasional thuds and thumps on the floor. I've lived with infants and toddlers before, so it was no big deal and really understandable. However, the noises got louder and more frequent. Over time, my girlfriend and I began to refer to them as professional upstairs neighbors. It went from faint family noises to a family bowling night atop our ceiling in a matter of months. We quickly learned that the thuds were a small husky puppy and that the noise was getting worse as he grew. Aside from the first 2 life forms they nurture, they also tend to a whopping 20-plus plant collection on their back patio, several hanging off the balcony's railing and draining on our area. We live on the ground floor. The 2 of us kind of ignored it because 1, we had no idea who our neighbors were or what they looked like, and 2, we were new. We didn't want to start any kind of conflict until one day. I woke up late for work and was rushing to my car when a neighbor from the adjacent building ran over to me. They told me they just saw someone back right into the front of my car and drive off. She described a lifted tan truck with a sticker-bombed back window, veteran plates, and the license starting with the letter C. She pointed out exactly where in the parking lot they backed out of and what they drove. So we contacted the apartments to tell them what had happened and see if they could pull it up on their cameras. They said that there was one vehicle that fit that description, and it has registered a parking pass to be there, so it's a tenant. They told me they'd call and ask them if they did. Why would you admit to doing hit and run? And about an hour later they called me back and said they denied doing so. It's truly a shocker. For obvious privacy reasons, they couldn't tell me who the tenant was. They told me I should utilize home security cameras to prevent that. But our original landlord told us no cameras can be placed outside and facing people's doors or windows or hallways, and our entire complex is exactly that. They also told us they have no form of surveillance cameras except for the main office doors. We basically got told to kick rocks, and we just had to deal with it. So I did the rational thing everybody would do and painstakingly monitored the parking lot for a night to find out who the truck belonged to. I put 2 and 2 together and saw it was one of our upstairs neighbors. After that, I made a point to say something when I saw them the next morning before work. I told him he had a nice car, but it looked scuffed on the back bumper. For me, that was enough, but the next day I got an email about a noise complaint. It detailed loud music and prohibited instruments clauses in our lease. Except nobody was home that day, and we're usually very quiet. And then the next day, once again the same thing. I told my landlord about the situation, and they were unsatisfied with it all. They confirmed that it wasn't loud at all, and we've never been loud. At that point, though, we had only seen a man and a woman. After the noise complaints, she became parking lot security, and would monitor every time I came home from work. Leer out of windows, awkwardly stand in stairways and just watch me. After a while, we had a confrontation where we exchanged insults. She accused us of lurking around her and all 4 of her roommates' vehicles and leaving scratches on different cars. We kinda laughed because of the irony of the situation, and she hurled more mean things at us. We were able to successfully break the conversation when I told her it wasn't our fault they had a baby before they could rent a house, and that they should invest in home security cameras to prevent things in the future. It's now 6 months into their lease, and we're at war with passive-aggressive watering of dangling plants onto our patio. I'm at the point where I feel like we can justifiably retaliate in a petty way, so my plan is this. 1. Acquire a disguise. 2. Acquire an 8-foot ladder. 3. Fill spray bottle with vinegar. 4. Drench their plant garden with vinegar whilst they sleep. 5. Repeat steps 3 and 4 for 5 nights with alternating disguises. 6. Let them water dead dirt. My girlfriend is definitely against the idea. I am what the kids would call a big stepper when it comes to this petty thing, and I'm ready to elevate to childish levels. Please, if anyone has any suggestions or ideas on how to further my cause, let me know immediately. Hellfreezer's note, well, first you should listen to your girlfriend. She knows what she's talking about. Don't do any big steps or anything. Although, if you wanted to buy masks of all the recent presidents, like you're going back to like Nixon or Jimmy Carter or whatever, then wear a different one of those every night, kind of like in Point Break. That would be a good option to go for disguises. But don't do that, because that would be bad, and I don't encourage that. Besides, the fact of the matter is, if you escalate now, you're only going to look like the bad guy. They're already saying you're the bad guy, so don't give them justification. Also, you don't know if they might actually have took your advice and have cameras installed somewhere. 3. Disclaimer, I include races of individuals because race is unfortunately relevant in this situation. The issue itself revolves around accusations of beliefs about race and immigration. My neighbor from hell is herself a Mexican immigrant, but her behavior is not a reflection of the broader Mexican immigrant community. Do not misinterpret it as such. This is one person, and she is an outlier. My wife and I, Caucasian, live in an apartment, a townhouse. Our front door is 4 feet from our neighbors. We have lived here for 4 years with no issues. New neighbor moved in next door a year ago with her 3 kids, one of whom is the same age as our toddler son. No issues, cordial acquaintances. Just a hi, how are things, when we happen to come or leave our home at the same time. Back in February, we hired a nanny, a Chilean immigrant neighbor, to watch my older toddler's son, along with a close friend's Kazakh immigrant's toddler daughter, who lives directly across the parking lot from us. The nanny also lives in our complex, so it was quite convenient for everyone. Months pass. Then, one June morning, after the nanny picked up the toddlers, I was chatting with my friend across the street when my next-door neighbor starts yelling at me from her upstairs window. My parents are coming over this weekend. Okay. They're Mexican. Great. Tell your wife. Take down that sign. Then slammed her window shut. I was genuinely confused. Not only did I have no idea what she was talking about, but also which sign she was referring to. We have a number of political signs in our window, so I messaged her on Facebook Messenger telling her I was super confused by the interaction and to clarify. According to my neighbor, my wife made an ugly face at her cousins, who helped her move in a year ago, which made them all think that my wife was racist against Mexican immigrants. She claims that because of this, all of her family members are hesitant to visit. Therefore, she says our Black Lives Matter sign is hypocritical and we need to take it down. I assured her that this was a terrible misunderstanding, and that she can't assume people are racist simply for not smiling at people. My wife and I both grew up around many Latin American immigrants and speak Spanish on a working level. Some of our own family members are in fact Mexican. We love them and the culture very much. We also are very pro-immigration in general. Her accusations could not be farther from the truth. I told her to not project her prejudices onto others. She then accused me of mansplaining and invalidating her feelings. Perhaps I was too firm in insisting she cease her unfounded accusations. Because of this, she doubled down on her accusations, saying she used to think only my wife was racist, but now believes I am too. Realizing that she would not change her mind, I didn't respond. I told her nanny about this situation and come to find out that back in February, our next-door neighbor wanted our nanny to watch her toddler, but she declined so she could watch ours. Our neighbor told our nanny back in February that we are racist and to not do business with us, months before we had any idea that our next-door neighbor thought we were racist. The real reason our nanny declined to watch our next-door neighbor's toddler was because that others in the local Latin American sub-community of the neighborhood told her to stay away from my next-door neighbor. Apparently unbeknownst to me, many neighbors have had drama with her in the past. My nanny said it's best to avoid her at all costs. Taking her advice, I have adopted a policy of just pretending she doesn't exist. The trouble is, she lives right next door. Fast forward to August. My toddler is now going to daycare with our next-door neighbor's toddler. No big deal. I just pretend she doesn't exist. Come to find out, she's causing drama there as well, not with me, but with the caregivers. On top of that, she often walks her toddler to daycare smelling of alcohol, and sometimes cannabis, both legal here. But since she doesn't drive, there's no justification to call the cops. Then one day, when I was walking to my front door, she walks to her front door at the same time and starts yelling at me for being racist and still needing to take down our BLM sign. And, "I study Latin American immigration, and I know racism when I see it, and you guys are such hypocrites." When all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail, I suppose. While she's yelling at me, I kept my eyes on my door and saying, "I'm not listening to you," until I finally managed to unlock my door. Since then, every time we're outside at the same time, usually when I come back from dropping my son off at daycare, and she is leaving to drop her kids off at school, she yells at her kids, "Hurry up, come outside, don't talk to our racist neighbor, don't look at him." They're decent kids as far as I can tell. Pity they have her as a mom. So, that's where we're at now. I'm lost for what to do. Nothing that she has done is illegal as far as I know, and telling administration she calls me racist feels like a petty complaint. But I really don't like the fact that she has told multiple neighbors that my family is racist with literally no evidence. The deeper issue that I see is that I genuinely believe she's mentally unwell. She clearly fabricates memories and has a warped perception of reality that is not helped by drug use. My wife fears our neighbor will one day flip a switch and try to harm one of us. What would you do in this situation? Hellfreezer's note. If I were you, I'd start keeping a note. If possible, like if you're going to leave the house and you know she's going to try and start something, try and record that interaction. Obviously, as far as the laws within your state go. Although if she's yelling through to you while you're in your own house, I think it's illegal to record in your own house, right? Anything else that gets picked up would be incidental. But document. Just make sure you've got proof of her behavior, because it might sound like what she's doing is nothing right now, beyond, some hurt feelings, but it's continual harassment. And she's obviously tried to turn others against you. Thankfully, it doesn't sound like it's working. And I really do think you're giving her too much of the benefit of the doubt by saying that you think she's mentally unwell. Some people are just jerks, and they'll say anything to bolster their silly arguments, and I think that's what's happening here. Or she's just constantly high. 4. Got some neighbors at a place I'm renting that are being kind of petty. So from the beginning, everything was cool, never had any issues, had potlucks and whatnot, real friendly exchanges. One day their dog got out and chewed ours up. Cost us a good $2,000 to get everything fixed up. No report was made. We were trying to remain neighborly and understood it was an accident. Didn't even ask them to do anything about the dog or help us with the vet bills. They said they would keep it on the other side of the apartment, away from the door. They didn't, but we kept our outings to walk the dogs to a minimum and set up a schedule. Our dogs had a time getting used to it, but we got through it. For some reason, after we started noticing animosity towards us. We had come to an agreement as neighbors, all 4 living spaces, that the rear gate to the walkway would be locked at all times, and the front would stay open during the day for packages, with it getting locked once the sun went down. It's mostly women and kids here, with the exception of me and one other grown man, so safety is key. We had originally set up some cams in the parking area behind the building due to vehicle break-ins, and caught them complaining about the back gate being locked, with a few choice words directed at us specifically. It got to the point where they just started leaving it wide open, which bothered everyone, especially when they would do it at night. I tried resolving the issue by speaking with them, but they firmly stated that the issue won't leave until they do. A few months later, they were moving a piece of furniture that ended up deeply scratching my vehicle. Again, being neighborly, I didn't make a report or ask for financial compensation. I just asked that they be more careful, and they acted like they didn't know who did it. Although they had access to their back door from the parking area, they didn't use that access point or ask me to make space. Kind of felt like a choice on their end, to be honest. So down the line, they ended up having an issue with the way I park. My vehicle is kind of long, and I park within my margins, at an angle in my space to keep my rear end from being in the alley, so I don't get swiped by the garbage truck. If I parked straight, I completely blocked the way. I thought I was being fair. They got the landlord involved. I gave my side and proved photos. I was cleared on that one. The landlord asked us to be courteous and resolve our issues. I tried. In response to the landlord, they took their only vehicle and parked it in one of their 2 spaces right up against my vehicle. You can't squeeze between them at all. I'm at a loss as to how to proceed. I've moved my vehicle back to provide more space on the walkway. Unfortunately, I still have to park at an angle, but I keep it between the lines. They don't want to resolve the issue and continue parking as close as possible and unlocking and opening the gate whenever we go out and lock it. The other neighbors are perplexed by the issue, but aren't directly involved, as a lot of the animosity seems to be directed at my family and I. Realistically, what is my next step? What do they want? 5. So I live in an apartment attached to another apartment, and our building is facing inwards towards our shared driveway. The drive goes back towards another similar building with 2 more units, both facing outward toward the main street. The curb in front is designated as the place where we all line up our trash cans and recycling cans, all 8, and any bulk. The neighbors across the street have alley trash. A few years back, trash had fallen out of the cans and neighbors had used our bulk as excuses to drop off their own, and eventually there was a mound of excess trash out there around where we brought our cans. The city threatened to fine our landlords, and our landlord threatened to fine us. Something like $2,000 because of potential health and hazard risk. That is when I was informed that the curb is the responsibility of the 2 front units to maintain. After glove and shoveling through that, I've been pretty vigilant to avoid a repeat. So, when the new neighbors across the street got a basketball hoop in their front yard, and suddenly a new can is on my curb with a giant basketball hoop propped against it, and a little dresser too, I immediately noticed. After trash ran, they left behind the box and the dresser on my curb. So I returned the dresser and box onto their curb. I also knocked because I didn't want to seem rude. The wife answered. I told her, like, "Hey, I saw you put your trash on my curb." Dead stare. Well, they didn't take the box or the little dresser, so I brought it back. She squints. "See if any trash gets left on that curb, I'm responsible for it. I have to clean it up or I get fined." And she started yelling for her kids to come get this trash. I was like, well, this isn't the way I wanted to meet you for the first time, but I've been wanting any excuse to say hi, maybe, and she yells again. This time her husband yells back. "Did them kids let trash fall out of the can? You need me to..." She looks nervous now and goes, Okay, we got it," and closes the door in my face. I can hear her yelling at him. No, that lady across the street is just complaining. It's just some boxes." It was weird, but I thought I got my message across. Not so. Every single trash day it's there, and they are weird about it. On Saturday it won't be out there, not Sunday, but Monday morning there it is. And the dad waits till I go inside. I stand outside every Monday with my disabled son to put him on the bus, and usually the trash comes before or while we wait. And I'm telling you, this man sits on his porch just staring at me. One time I opened the door to walk down to the market and I caught him. Do you know, he just paused in the middle of the road like a squirrel. Weird. And yeah, I grumble to myself every stinking time I go out there and see this doggone trash. It upsets me that I went over and asked politely, and yet they continue. It upsets me that the other options are endless. I take pride in my home, now that he does it. The man next door does it too, and the man that lives behind him as well. Why? So they can park their vans up on the curb and avoid getting sideswiped. Now that's a total of 7 green cans and 7 blue bins, 14 cans on one curb, that I must account for. And yet, I still wouldn't have posted this rant except I finally asked him why, and he let me have it. See, I got bunk beds for my son's room to make room for physical therapy. So I was hauling out the old beds. First thing I did was bring down our 4 cans. Then I laid the mattresses out for bulk. This was Saturday. No other cans were out there. I go inside, grab a piece of the bed frame, come out, ta-da! Another green bin is sitting there, pushed up against my bulk. The neighbor across the way, they are not directly across from me either, they are diagonal from me, is standing up at the edge of his porch now, arms across his chest, mean-mugging me. So I'm like, what the hell is this about? Mind you, I have not said one word to this family in about 10 months. He must have just thought, today is the day. Well, I thought, what if there is a legit reason, huh? I cannot presume to know everybody and their business. Yes, I knew the neighbor that lived in that house prior to them. She had alley trash pickup, like everyone on that side, but I don't know. So I thought, well, let me just try asking again. Let's open a dialogue. So I asked him, hey, this is yours, right? Yep, he answered with every vein in his neck. Well, why do you put your trash can here? Oh my goodness, he started barking words at me. I couldn't hear him right at first. I heard, something, fit, you got it, trash, please. I said, what? Politely. And he repeated, it don't fit, and you ain't the trash police, bitch. Maybe you should worry about finding the man instead of worrying about the trash. I ignored the baiting and instead said, it doesn't fit. Why don't you call the city then? Why do you put it here on my property? I am the one who has to clean it up should something fall out. And he's just madder than snot that I'm still talking. He's stamping his foot and yelling, I did call the city. That's the trash spot. I've been putting my trash there for 2 years, and you've been a thorn in my side for 2 years. At this point, I realize he is not interested in a civil conversation, or even the truth for that matter. Maybe not even reality. I have had to call our city's sanitation department many a time, and I use the app for updates. I can assure you that this is not the trash spot. Each home is to put their bins out on their own curb on my side. On his side, it's alley trash. If it is true that the sanitation department suggested to him to just put it across the street, and it will be picked up, then they would have meant the curb beside ours, the empty one. Go ahead, utilize that one. There's plenty of room. Also, he has not lived here 2 years, 1 year, yes, and how am I a thorn? Like, talk to me. I know it can be scary or a headache. You think it was easy or fun for me to go traipsing over to a new neighbor's house and ask them to take back their trash? No, that ish was scary. But I digress. As I'm in my thoughts, this man is going on, and neighbors are starting to come out. You called me an idiot. You're talking to my kids. Yeah, I'm sick of you. Again, I couldn't think of where he is getting this stuff from. I wouldn't talk poorly to nobody's kids because let me find out somebody is saying something to my kids, right? Karma will get that. So no, sir, I did not. Lies. And I don't talk to women. I'm a man. So you got something to say to me? You tell your baby daddy, the one that drove the... you like that? I know about you, huh? You tell your baby daddy to come over here and talk to me. I got words for him, that's right, but leave me alone. Mind you, this whole time I've said nothing. I'm standing there at the edge of my driveway, mouth agape, eyebrows to heaven, just shaking my head. I was flabbergasted. Now at this point I turned to walk inside and finish my bed project. But his wife pulls up. She saw him yelling at me. So he suddenly yells out, You shut the F up, lady! Just shut the F up! My wife's home now and she's gonna kick your ass! And I know I shouldn't have done it. I know. But I turned back around so fast, I almost broke my own doggone neck. And I yell, I wasn't saying anything. I haven't said ish for like 5 minutes. Let it go. Why are you still talking, dickhead? Then I scooped my composure up off the ground and turned to go inside, just as he is instructing his poor wife to run across the street and kick my butt for what, exactly? Having the audacity to ask him a question. Anyway, since then he has stared across the street at me, even more if that's possible. This morning there were 7 green cans and 3 blue cans at our curb, fighting to hold on and not fall into the street. It's an eyesore, and every Monday I'm the one stuck collecting all the trash cans that falls out onto the curb, which is a lot these days. Saying it's not fair seems an understatement. Not to mention, now I know the guy diagonal from me is watching me a little too much for my comfort. Whatever happened to being polite and using communication and all that? I don't know. Was I really the difficult one here? What would y'all do? I'd appreciate any and all advice. Thank you. Hellfreezer's note, best advice I can give you is to take pictures of all the trash cans that are lined up and shouldn't be there. Fast forward them onto your landlord, because you shouldn't be getting in trouble for other people's problems. Also, if you can film these idiots putting the trash cans there, then maybe do that as well, obviously in accordance with the laws of your state. Best of luck with it, and I hope it gets resolved to your satisfaction soon. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours episode 17. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please do support me on my Patreon page. You can do that for as little as $1 a month. That is linked at the top of the description. Okay, we have no other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: when was the last time you had a problem with a neighbour? I had a minor problem with a neighbour today, actually. I was getting my head in a space just to go out. I'd had some workmen in doing some work on the electrics. They were wiring up, you heard me mention solar panels, they were wiring those up, so that's all cool and working now, which I'm happy about. And so they were gone. I'd moved everything back and I was like, okay, I'll get myself in the headspace to throw on some clothes and go out and buy some groceries, because it was that time in the week. Then I see movement. Well, I hear noises and I keep taking my head, what's that? What's that sound? It sounds people are like quite close to my house, although the workmen are away. And I look out and I see somebody pulling from the neighbour's house, pulling a branch over on something, one of the plants or the trees, whatever, in my garden. And it wasn't even drooping over into his area that much. I knew it was a little bit, so I had made plans, mentally made plans at some point. The next time I had enough energy to do it, I'd take a chainsaw to it and I'd cut it down. And they apparently decided they were just going to go and do it. So I said, excuse me, can I help you? He said, what? I said, can I help you? He said, oh, I was asked to trim this down. I said, so I looked at my neighbour. He was sitting there in his wheelchair. He's an older guy. His health has deteriorated quite quickly, I've noticed, which is really sad to see, because I remember that man being very, very vital. And so I said, you could have just given me a shout and I'd have cut it down for you, because it's just the presumptuousness of touching anything in my garden, you know? That and the fact that he knows I always eventually get around to trimming anything from my garden that's dripping into his, because I do it every single year. Well, I thought, whatever, just leave him to it. It's not really going to do much harm to it anyway, because it was something I was going to take away entirely anyway. So let me know what your recent troubles are if you are comfortable sharing in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Naughty Neighbours 16. And I believe this was... if you could change your eye color, what would you change it to? And today's answer comes from... Yamikaze. I would love to have a darker shade of blue, like sapphires, instead of the ice blue ones I have. Though I'm sure my partner would always call them Windex colored no matter what. Thank you very much for your answer. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.